So why am I talking to you about sexting with AIs and developing an emotional attachment to vacuum cleaners? It's because when we talk about technology, especially in the world of business, we tend to focus on the surface level changes. We say this is going to change our marketing, this is going to change our operations, this is going to change our recruiting. And because things are moving so fast, we only focus on those surface level changes, which means we ignore often the deeper cultural impact of how these tools are changing the way that we act, what we believe, and how we feel. And I believe that it is so important to understand those deeper impacts, because otherwise we don't fully understand how much we are, with technology, co-creating the world that we live in today. And as many of you know, the world that we live in today is one of extreme and complex volatility. We have the pandemic that changed the way people work forever, introducing new expectations and new ways of working. We have the collision of macro trends. We have social events happening. We have inflation and cost of living. We have climate change. We also have the rise of disruptive technologies. We have generative AI being used in healthcare models, being used in weapons by armies around the world. We also have geopolitics. We've got a war happening in Ukraine. We have a catastrophe unfolding in the Middle East. We have tensions mounting between China and the US. Not to mention that 2024 is a super election year. 40% of the world's population are going to go out and vote this year, including us here in the EU in the summer. So all of this means there is a tremendous amount of disruption that's happening. So what do you do with all of this? We certainly can't change the fact that these disruptions are happening, but what we can do is embrace a different type of mindset when these disruptions take place. I'd like to introduce you to an idea that you might have already heard of that has been very transformative in my own career, and that's the idea of anti-fragility. Anti-fragility was coined by an economist named Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the author of The Black Swan, back in 2012. And he said, when something really big happens in a market, there are three possible responses. The first response is that those that are not resilient, you just collapse. You can't adapt, you can't survive, you basically die. The second response is the one many of us are familiar with. It's those that are resilient. If you're resilient, then you're going to survive, and you're going to survive the system shock, and you're going to bounce back to where you were before the disruption occurred. But he said there's a third category of really interesting people and businesses, and he called those anti-fragile. And anti-fragile companies, anti-fragile leaders, they get stronger after a market shock. They come out of it and they are thriving. They're better than they were before. They're not just going back to how they were, they are better than they were when the event happened. And so in order to embrace this style of anti-fragility leadership, what do we have to do? Well, we have to recognize that being resilient is no longer enough. Surviving is no longer enough. We need to be getting stronger. We need to be thriving. We have to embrace disruption and discomfort. So today, I'd like to talk to you about what anti-fragility leadership means within the context of our digital landscape, which is my area of expertise, which is that of digital culture. So the first theme that I want to talk about is cultivating focus and recovery. So the technology that we use, they all come with a social context, which means we've all decided that there are a few rules that determine how we use the tools that we have today. For us, specifically at work, we have two things that are incredibly important. One, you always have to be responsive, you have to answer right away. And two, you have to be always available. And you can see these two things that are prioritized in the features of the tools that we use on a day-to-day basis. For example, you have notifications on social media, on emails, on WhatsApp, on Slack, on Teams. This is for you to always respond. And you have status updates that let your boss know, that let your team know that you're there, you're available. Now, what this has resulted in is a culture where we are constantly being distracted by interruptions, disruptions, and distractions. The average person is actually being distracted or interrupted. They touch their phone over 2,600 times per day. every single time you touch or swipe or tap on your phone, your brain releases dopamine, which I know you heard about this morning. And that dopamine makes an addictive little cycle. And while yes, it is very useful for us to be able to turn that into action or education, a lot of the communications we get at work just need our attention. A client needs something, your boss needs something, a colleague needs something. So it is a lot of interruptions. The problem with this is that anti-fragility as a leadership ideology is an act of creativity. You have to be creative to be able to spot opportunities or to use a new technology or to learn a new skill. You have to be creative to be anti-fragile. And creativity requires de-stimulation and uninterrupted time. It requires you to be bored. Now think about the last time that you were bored. I mean, don't say now, please, but think about another time. And you might find that it's really hard. You're waiting for a coffee, you're on your phone, your meeting is starting, you're checking your emails, you're waiting for your kid at soccer practice, you decide to read the news. You're always doing something. Researchers did a study where they took their devices away, and they put them in a room. And in this room, there was a table, a chair, and a little mechanical device. And when you touched the device, it generated an electric current. They found out that people would rather electrocute themselves than be bored for 25 minutes. This is the world that we live in today. So you have team culture that focuses on responding quickly instead of on taking the time to be reflective, to think about what all of these changes mean in order to be able to spot the opportunity. The message for you, for all of you in this room here, is that deep focus has become a very important skill. You have to practice it, you have to do it with intention, because there's so many different things that are trying to steal your attention on a regular basis. Because remember, the best technology, the best data, the smartest AI will not help if you are distracted, if you're too distracted to actually be able to apply the knowledge that you're using and that you're getting. The other thing I want to point out to everybody is that creativity also requires rest and recovery. You have to be in a state where you can recharge your energy. And this is really difficult in our modern day digital lives because of something called digital contagion. So researchers discovered that when you read things online, you're not just consuming them intellectually, you're actually consuming them physically as well. When you read about all the things I mentioned earlier, the wars, volatility, the economy, new technology, tensions, voting, elections, your body gets activated, your nervous system gets activated, which means that we have to remember that our human bodies were never actually designed to hold and process an entire planet's worth of emotions and rage and anger and tragedy. So you need to rest and you need to give your body a chance to disconnect, because without rest, you're not recovering, and without recovery, you can't focus. This means that you could be at home on the weekend, you could be on vacation, and if you are scrolling without giving your body a chance to recover, you're not actually recovering or restoring your energy. So the question I want you to think about is, does your technology strategy, the tools that you use, your email, your phone, all the devices that you have at work, do they actually prioritize deep focus and recovery? And if not, what changes can you make so that they do? The second theme is about building deep knowledge and expertise. I know you've been hearing a lot about generative AI and how much it's changing the way that businesses are run. When you're looking at how these tools are completely disruptive, you start to realize, well, they're only disruptive if you already have an interesting and existing skill set. Because many of these tools are still giving us very wrong answers. This is an example of a question that somebody asked ChatGPT, and everything that you see in red is wrong. It's factually inaccurate. So if I am not learning how to validate, if I'm not learning how to improve my expertise to work with AI, if I just grow to be dependent on the answers that AI gives me, what are the risks? I risk being given information and I can't even tell that it's wrong. So the important thing that I see as an opportunity here is that we need to keep leveling up our skill sets. So remember that deep expertise requires nuance, and it requires more than just knowing how to give the right prompt. You have to have context, you have to have experience, And these are the people who have these things that are going to use these tools to be anti-fragile because they're going to be able to do their jobs much faster than people that are just trying to take shortcuts. So the question I want you to ask yourself is, how can we deepen or expand our expertise so that we can better collaborate with these tools? Because it'll make you more reflective, it'll make you more responsive. So volatility is the new normal. This is just the reality that we live in right now, but I also believe that disruption and volatility always creates opportunity. And the difference between the people who take advantage of the opportunity and the people who don't is mindset. So if you have the skills to be able to navigate uncertainty, to be okay with not knowing, to be able to talk about complexities and dualities, then this disruption is going to be an incredible opportunity for you to build amazing companies, build technology that has a positive impact. You're going to do a lot. And if not, you're just going to get lost in all of the waves of change, and you're not even going to know which way is up. So you can't predict the future, you can only prepare for the future. And this is all about being an anti-fragile leader. So in a world where the answers are always changing, the only thing we can count on is asking the right questions. Are we designing for deep focus? Are we building intentional systems of expertise? Are we aligning our technology with our beliefs? Are we listening to digital communities? Are we embracing duality? These are the earmarks of anti-fragile leadership, because the only thing you can get really good at is asking questions. So we should be okay with asking questions and okay with following the answers no matter where they lead us. I'd like to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite sociologists, the American Rahaf Harfoush. He says, "In a world of change, the learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited, but for a world that no longer exists." So which ones are you going to choose to be, the learners or the learned? Because the choice is up to you. Thank you very much.